Hello and welcome to another video. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make bass music in the style of Vex'd, inspired by their 2005 album Degenerate. The project file, samples and presets are available for a small contribution in the description. And if you find this video useful, then consider liking, subscribing and turning on the bell notifications. Our BPM is 140, and whilst I've used G harmonic minor as a starting point, the project has a chromatic bass progression like in Gunman or Angels. Let's start with the kick. So we have a fat kick, which is what you'd hear during this era of dubstep. Then we have the drums. Starting with the claps and snares. The sample selection here is mostly inspired by Gunman, and whilst you don't need quite as many individual samples as I've used here, the interplay of different mid-range perks heard in tracks like Angels does help recapture Vex'd grime adjacent grooves. I'll draw your attention to the reverse clap and the reverb snare, which add some flair to the loop. Next, we have the hats. Nothing too crazy going on here. Again, reversed hats like the claps. So for this project, I extracted the drum groove from the intro to Gunman, and I've applied it to all the MIDI in the drums group, as well as the shouts. On the drums group, we have EQ, saturation, and parallel compression. Reverb is applied via Send A. For this project, I've chosen the empty club preset, so just a simple short digital reverb. Given the period in which these tracks were produced, this is probably the type of reverb Vex'd would have used or something similar, especially as their music is very dry in terms of effects, except for some echoes. Next, we have the basses. For both channels, I split the frequencies and used two different instances of Serum in each instrument rack. I'll put a video with an in-depth explanation of this technique on the screen and in the description. First, we have the respace. Let's look at the sub first. So oscillator A is a saw wave taken down by 2 octaves with its unison at 7, and this is running into this low pass filter with drive and fat. The sub oscillator is also active and is a sine wave again taken down by 2 octaves. There's glide in the voicing tab, and in the effects there's distortion. On the chain, I've used a mono utility, as Serum pans the unison voices, and we have a compressor. And finally, an EQ3 splitting the frequencies. For the top, this is similar to the sub patch, but here we have some white noise in the noise generator. This is running into the filter, and we have FM via oscillator B. Oscillator A is being FM'd by oscillator B, and this is a sine wave taken down by an octave with its unison at 7 and its level taken down. In the effects, we have flanger in addition to distortion. On the chain, there's overdrive. And this is one of the reasons why I've used this frequency splitting technique. Whilst the overdrive helped me get closer to Vex'd's dirty aesthetic, it also attenuates areas outside of the filter. So if I want to emphasize the mids, the bass can end up being de-emphasized. Then we have the frequency splitting EQ. Next, we have the square bass. So here the setup for the bass is very similar to the previous instrument. So for the sub, this time we have a square wave taken down by 2 octaves with its unison at 7. This is running into a low pass filter with its cutoff modulated by LFO1. Again, there's drive and fat on this filter. Sub oscillator is a sine wave, again taken down by 2 octaves. And we have distortion in the effects. There's the same chain setup here as the previous channel. Then for the top, there's no sub oscillator. We have noise again instead running into the filter. Plus hyperdimension in the effects. On the chain, we have erosion for more noise, overdrive, and EQ. And on the channel, there's an auto filter softening the highs. On the group, there's mono utility, since Vex'd basses seem to be fully mono. Saturator, EQ, parallel compression, chorus, adding back some width, and a rack where the kick sidechains the basses below 150 Hz. Reverb is applied via A. Finally, we have the FX and vocals group.
Are they slow moving too? Good Lord. Yeah, they're dead. All messed up.
Starting with the noise effects, so we have noise effects 1, noise effects 2, and the reload. For noise effects 1, we have the Atmos 7 noise running into a low pass filter, although I'm mainly using this to add drive and fat. In the effects, there's hyperdimension, distortion, and EQ. On the channel, there's shifter, so I can retune the noise and EQ. Then we have the second noise effects, which is essentially the same patch. Again, there's shifter and EQ, but I've got an additional formant filter in Serum Effects after some distortion. Here, the formant filter adds some vocal quality to the sound. Many of Vex'd textures and one-shots have a unique vocal quality, so this was my attempt at emulating this. And finally, we have the reload sample. On the channel, we have Serum Effects with rectifier distortion and phaser, EQ, and echo. Next, we have the shouts. So here we have 3 vocally one-shots in a drum rack. Then we have the beep. This is a sine wave with bright white noise and a filter with its cutoff modulated by LFO1. In the effects, there's distortion. On the channel, we have EQA, and some echo. This is inspired by the beep heard in Angels. Finally, we have the vocals.
Are they slow moving too?
Good Lord.
Yeah, they're dead. All messed up. Are they slow moving too? Yeah, they're dead. All messed up.
These vocal samples are taken from the 1968 film Night of the Living Dead. Whilst they aren't necessarily the most representative of the type of vocal samples Vex'd use on Degenerate, they are representative of dubstep sampling and are royalty-free as they're in the public domain. If you wanted to make the vocal sound a bit more sound system-y, you could try stretching them using the texture algorithm. Might clean up these types of retro samples if I was making a different style, but since Vex'd music is noisy anyway, it adds to the vibe, particularly with the echo. There's also saturation, EQ, and erosion for even more noise. On the group, there's bass mono below 500 Hz, saturation, EQ8, parallel compression using glue again, chorus, and reverb via A. And that's the video. Please leave any questions in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.